Hey, WellFit fam, welcome to the WellFit Lab podcast. It is your host, Burnout Coach Shy 1000 here. So excited to be talking with you guys today on this Mindset Monday. Today we're talking with my girlfriend, Lynne Lucas. Lynn is an IT professional, has been in the industry over 20 years. Her resume is stacked, so you definitely want to be a part of today's conversation in the lab. She is also a brand ambassador for Fly Ageless. She is active on Clubhouse, helping to found the Black Men in STEM Club and participating in regular chats about diversity in tech, relationships, wellness, and being fly, hip, and ageless. Today's conversation is going to cover a few things. It's going to be talking about agelessness, wellness at any age, as well as wellness in our careers, especially IT, which is a very demanding career. So make sure you grab your tea, grab a pen and paper because she's dropping gems today, and let's head into the lab. All right, I want to thank you for joining me, Miss Lynne Lucas. I want you to run your own resume down because I don't think it does you justice to run your resume down, especially when you look at your Clubhouse page, when I look at your Instagram. I don't think it still does you enough justice. It's when we go to your LinkedIn that we really see like, oh, okay, this is no average Joe here. Nuh-uh.
Yeah, that's funny. So I'm Lynn. I am about to be 55 within a couple of weeks, which is why discussion is so dope to me. I work in the tech field. I have worked in the tech field for over 20 years. I've worked for some companies, some little teeny companies like UPS, Home Depot, AT&T, WorldPay, which people are not super familiar with, but WorldPay is now a part of Vantiv. And if you ever swiped your credit card in a gas station or a bodega, you used our software. And then a really, really little company now called Amazon.
Yeah, that little startup company. How are they doing anyway?
They're okay. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're trying to get by. Like, all this pandemic has been so detrimental. No, let me stop. It's been kind of awesome and crazy, but yeah.
It's crazy. That's why I say I like when you do your resume, because you say it. And I think even on IG, like, people don't really know. And you've gotten extremely even more popular on IG. And now you have this following on Clubhouse. But I think, like, to know you and to know what you actually have done is pretty freaking dope. And let me just highlight also, and you are a Black woman in the tech industry over 20 years, doing it for all these small companies. Yes, exactly.
Yes, I am Black.
You know how to get the bags, you know where the bags are, and then you collect the bags.
Yes, and that's the funny part about being here. Like, it's super surreal. Because when I started in tech, I just wanted a little desktop support job, fix folks' computers and send them on their way. I never ever imagined I would be here, but also I'm super conscious that we represent a collective of Black folks in tech. There's a bunch of folks all across the country. I came out of a contingent in Atlanta that's gigantic. Moved to Seattle, where there's a very flourishing contingent of Black folks that work in tech. I know people in Austin. I know people in New York. I know people in Chicago. Like, there's a whole collective. And I don't know that we get enough FaceTime for people to see us. Yeah, so that they can see what we're doing. But I'm happy. And I got locks too.
Okay, that part. That part, which is why I was like, I have to have you on the podcast, because you are a woman of a certain age. And I love that. Not just do you not look like anybody's grandma, you out here doing it, living your best life all day, just relocated. Like, you're just out here and you're doing it in business and in your personal life. And we don't see that enough. We saw that with the Huxtables. You see that some people on IG are doing it, but IG is also hard too, right? Because a lot of people claiming they're doing it on IG are really not doing it. So to know you doing it in real life, as they say, I think is a huge highlight. And I want to make sure that we are having those healthy conversations, highlighting Black women in the areas in which we don't see them enough in, and talk about, let's dispel some of these myths. Like, all right, so let's just jump right into it. How do you define wellness?
Oh gosh. I think the first thing that comes to mind is balance. Being spiritually, intellectually, emotionally, sexually, physically. It's those things being in balance or achieving some level of balance, and understanding that it is a journey. It is not a destination. It is an
Mm-hmm.
process. We work at it all the time. And
Mm-hmm.
you know how we met, and we should talk about
Yeah,
how we met.
we
Um,
should. I just thought about that. That's so funny. I love that you said that. Okay.
yeah. But that maintaining balance is a journey. It's a process. It's something that we actually have to put energy into and effort into, and then we reap the rewards. That
Mm-hmm.
to me represents wellness on all levels. And I don't think you can have any of the elements without the other ones. Like you can people think you can be intellectually balanced but emotionally imbalanced. I'm like, nah, shit, that's not how that works. These things
Mm-hmm.
do not work in silos. There's a
Yeah.
level of wellness that you have to achieve in all of those areas to be a well-balanced individual. So that's what it represents for me.
That's so true. I love that you brought that up because I think that a lot of times people think they can do the work in one aspect of their life and not have to do the other work in another aspect. Like even when it comes to our emotional stability and relationships, a lot of time we think that we're going to get with somebody and that makes us whole. No, we are whole before we get with that person, or we're working on our stuff before we get with that person, and they only complement to it. So I think it's really, I'm happy you brought that up because I think that's really important to share. And then
Yeah.
also how we met. Yes, we definitely need to share how we met.
Yeah.
So we actually met in Bali. And I
Mm-hmm.
love that because not a lot of people can say that, especially not a lot of Black women
Right.
can have been able to have that level of conversation either. We met in Bali on a wellness retreat. Shout out to Noir and Christina, who put together this retreat in 2018.
Yeah.
And we went to Bali. And it's funny because I knew Christina outside of the retreats. And when she knew that you were coming, she said, "Hey, there's another girl coming who works for Amazon." Because at the time I was working for Amazon. And I was like, really? Wow. Okay. Super odd. Okay, but cool. And
Yeah.
then we get there, and you were actually on the team that my team spoke to pretty often to get
Right.
things fixed. And we were both like, wow, okay, this is awesome. Really cool.
Right.
And
Right.
what I love about that is that we were both, and honestly, it was 30 Black women there on a wellness retreat in Bali, finding our balance, getting our balance, pouring into ourselves in a way
Yeah.
that is not something that is shared enough about, in a way that was very luxurious because we totally stayed at a 5-star resort.
We
So
did.
normalize luxury, normalize
Yeah.
rest for Black women, and
Yes.
normalize us cultivating sisterhood and relationships, because that's not enough in the conversation and narrative of Black women.
It was so healing.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was such a short period of time. As looking back, it was such a
Mm-hmm.
short period of time, but it felt like a month's vacation because
Yes.
we spent so much time actively sort of trying to find balance and working on wellness and doing things to like pour into ourselves spiritually: yoga, meditation, hiking, sightseeing, of course, spiritual
Mm-hmm.
rituals, like and then physical things to sort of heal ourselves. Like it was so enriching that it felt like a month.
Yeah, it
um
really did.
and I came back like a whole new person, and it taught me some solid techniques to manage stress on an ongoing
Mm-hmm.
basis that I still rely on a daily basis. So, and I'm so grateful for that. And the call out at any age, because while there were 30 of us and everywhere we went, we were the onlys. It was super cool to see like this group of sisters amongst
Mm-hmm.
course from all over the world. And it was just like a collective of us. We varied, although we had that, Black woman demographic as a similarity. We were across all ages. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, the youngest folks were probably in their 30s, maybe late 20s.
Yeah, I think like late 20s.
Yeah,
Yeah.
probably late 20s. And then me being like in my 50s. And it was like, it felt very inclusive and very engaging. Like it really felt like a sisterhood, which is super cool. So if I can encourage women, if y'all get an opportunity to go on a retreat, a wellness retreat, or spend some time with your sisterhood, like working on healing things, I don't care about age, take advantage of this, because
Mm-hmm.
it's a gift that you give to yourself.
Absolutely. Especially, I think you weren't the oldest. Remember, someone's mom was there too. So
Oh,
you
that's
were not
right.
the oldest.
That
someone's
is
mom was
right.
there, and she
Yeah.
had an amazing time. I think she balled out more than any of us.
She
So
did.
she had an amazing time, and everyone just embraced each other. And I can definitely say for myself, spiritually, one of the things that was most healing for me was just spending time with God every morning before we went out
Yeah.
and did stuff. And
Yeah.
there was one point during yoga where I literally felt like God just like opened me up and poured his love into me. So
Yeah.
that was something that was so powerful. I definitely think God was preparing me for the next phase of my life as on that retreat, because there was so many things I came home to that I could have never even thought would have been a part of my narrative. And it prepared me for it because I was so full of God and just his love in that time, that coming home to that space of just confusion somewhat actually gave me peace. I didn't feel in chaos. I didn't feel any of that. And it was almost as if I was able to deal with it as a result of being on that retreat. So I highly encourage women, when they say that women can't build relationships, when they say that women don't go and do these things together, that's a lie. You just
It
haven't met
is.
them. You haven't built that tribe yet. And that's something that we each personally have to actively do.
Yeah.
Sometimes the internet will have us thinking that building a tribe is a one-time thing. No, we
Mm-mm.
are ever changing. We are ever evolving. What your tribe looked like 10 years ago may not be what your tribe looks like today. So just keep that in
Exactly.
mind and give yourself grace as you build your relationships and take advantage of opportunities like that.
Definitely. And it's been such a beautiful thing. Like, you and I have stayed connected over the years.
Mm-hmm.
And as you mentioned, like, when you come back and you come back to chaos, but you've already achieved a level of balance, of internal balance, of spiritual balance, of
Yeah.
emotional balance, you're like, oh, that chaos is cute. You're not gonna suck me in again, though. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm good over here. I'm gonna try to stay good over here. It gives you the tools to not only be able to look at it from a distance and say,
Mm-hmm.
I don't, because that thing is chaotic, the chaos doesn't have to reside in me, but
Mm-hmm.
also it gives you active tools like, what, I'm gonna meditate or pray on this and
Yeah.
separate myself from this, like active tools, so you can deal with things that are chaotic. And I think that's so beautiful.
Absolutely. And it's so interesting because when I came back, I literally, so much stuff was coming my way that I actively tried to pursue the same level of peace I had when I was in Bali. And I had to come to a revelation within myself, knowing it wouldn't be exactly the same because I was removed from my own life. That's vacation. It was almost like coming back, but I could still reach a level of that peace. And
Right.
so accepting I could still reach a level of that peace and that God had already prepared me for it, that was one of the things that I was like, wow, I'm really struggling. But then I was like, girl, Grace, like, you're going to reach a level of that. It's not going to be the same because none of these people were in Bali with you.
Right. Exactly.
So that's awesome. Okay. So let's jump into the next thing. So what do you think there is a stigma about wellness over a certain age? Because you've touched on this many times in our personal conversations on social media. And what does that look like?
Gosh, there's such a stigma about aging in general, and I feel like I'm sort of evolving into this anti-ageist person. Not that I don't want to grow up, because I'm already grown. I just refuse to buy into. I actually actively rebuke or refute the idea that once you get over a certain age, you have to stop doing stuff. You're supposed to not do certain things, or like the rules change, or that you can't still achieve wellness. Like, I don't understand how people get complacent, or they kind of accept, well, I'm over a certain age, so my life is just going to be like this. Like, I don't buy into that. I think people can evolve at any age. You can redo your entire life at whatever age you choose. We all have limitations and constraints. That part I understand, but that doesn't preclude us from pursuing an active spiritual life, or like starting some physical activities to achieve a better level of balance in your physicality, or if it's your thing, like finding a partner and having awesome sex, if that's your thing. Like, there's nothing as a grown person that really stops us from going down a path to pursue a level of wellness and balance in whichever areas of our lives need attention, except us, like the
Yeah.
constraints that we put on ourselves. So I guess I'm sort of thinking, and I guess I talk about this on social media all the time, the fact that you can remove those constraints. They're yours. You can own
Yeah.
them and just get rid of them, and then do whatever it is that you decide to do. So
It's also accepting that life is composed of our choices, right? Like
Yeah.
everything that happens to you is not necessarily happening to you. It can be also happening for you. It's about perspective and knowing that your choices have brought you to this point, whether they be good or bad. They have brought you to this point. And some things are out of your control. So once you accept the things that are out of your control and you focus on the things that are in your control, you realize you actually have more control than you thought you did. But
Yeah.
because we live our lives very passively and we're not always active participants in our own lives, that we believe that, oh, that's out of my control. Oh, I can't do that. I can't do that. And we listen to social media, right? Like, honestly,
Yes.
grandmas don't look the same way they used to look when I was growing up. Like, you know,
They,
your grandma was always old, but your grandma
yes.
always looked like a grandma. I don't
Right.
remember my grandma ever looking like a baddie. And now grandma's is out here. Like, and my
Yes.
grandma was a bad woman. Like, when I look back at pictures, I'm like, wow, grandma had it going on, but she was
Mm-hmm.
always looking like a grandma to me. Now I'm
Yeah.
like, wow, I don't know what happened. And even if you look back at like, I always think it's funny if you look back at, oh my gosh, Magic Johnson. When
Mm-hmm.
Magic Johnson was young, he looked way older.
He did. Oh my gosh. He looked like at 30. His
Girl, even
30.
before 30, when he first got
Yeah.
drafted. Do you remember how
Yes.
old he looked? He had a
He,
full mustache, this
and a
hair,
full
like
beard.
he would look like he was 30 when he first got drafted. Larry
This
Bird
is
looked
true.
older. They are, if
They
you look at the
did.
NBA just in general, from 40 years ago, the
They
NBA looks
did.
very different. And
They
they look
did.
so much older at the same age as these NBA players now. So
Right.
it's crazy how then we looked older. And I think that was like the culture, right? To look a little bit older. But now the
Right.
culture is like everybody's trying to look younger. So there's a
And
stigma for no reason.
for no reason. And you're right. These grannies don't look. Listen, I admire so many women of that are quote unquote of a certain age
Mm-hmm.
for just like living out loud. And I think the idea of them living out loud and not living within constraints and defining themselves
Mm-hmm.
has led to them appearing to look younger. Like when I look at
Yes.
Tina Turner, her biopic was not like it's
Mm-hmm.
so good.
Mm-hmm.
Viola Davis, Angela Bassett, Mama Tina, because Mama Tina's a baddie too. Like these
Yep.
women do not look like grandmothers. They don't look
Mm-mm.
like they're in their 50s and
Mm-hmm.
60s and 70s and 80s. And those are but then I look at their lifestyle. You know what I'm saying? Like you decide, okay, I'm gonna own this, I'm gonna control this, I'm gonna, have more control over my destiny. I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
eat better, I'm gonna, exercise more or be more physically active. I'm going to get in touch with my spirituality and define my spirituality for myself and use the things that work for me. Like Tina
Mm-hmm.
becoming a Buddhist and practicing
Mm-hmm.
yoga and meditation and becoming a vegan and really transforming her life should be inspirational to all of us.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't all have to be vegan. We don't all have to do yoga and meditation, but you can take inspiration from that and say, you know what? I want to have more control over what my spiritual path and my physicality looks like. So let me see what choices work for me and then implement those so I can feel better. And if I feel better, I'll look younger.
Absolutely. And it says something about it. When you take the time to pour into yourself, you can truly be there for everyone else. And that to me is self-care. You
Yes.
cannot give from an empty vessel. And for so long, the culture narrative was, oh, if you're a mother, you can't do these things. Oh, if you're an older woman, you can't do these things. And I think what we are now seeing is such a shift in culture and narrative across the board where people are like, you know what, I'm gonna make myself the priority and pour into my spirit, because if your spirit is youthful, then your body is youthful. If you feel you have
Exactly.
the energy within your spirit and your mind to do these things and you're still going after them, then there's no reason that you can't. My best friend's mom, when she turned like 63, she learned how to juggle. She taught herself how to juggle. Like,
I
it's
like
so
that.
funny, but it's also something that keeps her very youthful. And it's
Right.
something that keeps her very fun and engaging all the time. But you got to figure out what that thing is for you and not let
Exactly.
society impose its own restrictions upon you as just an
Exactly.
individual.
Exactly. I love that juggling story too, because that's the kind of thing that people should take inspiration from. For
Mm-hmm.
me, along with the journey that you and I took together to Bali, I like aerial yoga. I don't know why I like aerial yoga. I just
Mm-hmm.
do because it's fun to me. And
Mm-hmm.
that's one of the things that I draw both some physical activity, but also it helps me focus in my meditation to be upside down and let the blood rush through my head, and it stretches out my lower back, and like I feel energized after I do something like that. Or even like retaking up something that you're familiar with. I used to roller skate when I was young.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't roller skated in like 20 something years, and I'm trying to do it on a low to like
Mm-hmm.
relearn how to do it. I'm mindful of the back and the knees at this age, but but those are the kind of things that I would love to see women across the board. The age thing doesn't matter. If you have the physical ability to, or even like going for a walk, getting outside and getting some fresh air. I think people have been cooped up because of COVID, and
Yeah.
folks are stressed out. Like, go outside, get some vitamin D, get some
Yeah.
sun, like get some fresh air. See some, like, I know this is going to sound super cliche, see some flowers and some grass, because there are, that can energize you. You will
It definitely
gain.
can. Yeah, and
uh
it doesn't sound cliche at all. Like, honestly, enough of us are not going outside. People are so
yeah,
afraid to go outside right now, but it's like we still got to keep living. The life is for
right,
the living. It is not for the dead. And you can be dead in spirit. The Bible definitely talks about being dead in spirit. So you only got one life to live. Get out there, get out there, get out there. I can't say it enough. One thing I appreciate about my dogs, a part of my wellness routine is going on walks with my dog. And my dog is literally super mindful. He stops and smells flowers every single time we walk past flowers. If people
right.
are walking with me, they always go, "Is he really smelling the flowers?" Like, he will stop the entire walk and will sit there smelling flowers for at least a good 5 minutes. And then he's
Right,
like, "Okay, we can keep walking." And I'm like, I
right,
don't do that enough. And when I first got him and I realized he did this, that made me very mindful. Like, you need to stop and smell the flowers more often. This dog doesn't speak. He has his own language. He talks to other
yeah,
dogs, but he sits here and he stops and smells the flowers. What's your excuse?
right, right. If we could impart that to women across all ages, that those kind of activities are the things that keep you youthful. It's not, listen, I'm not opposed to going and getting snatched. Ain't nothing wrong with it. Like, do
Mm-mm.
what works for you. But also, there are all these holistic things that feed your spirit, or feed your physicality, or feed your emotional wellness, that you can, simple things that you can do, and you're not constrained by finances. Like,
Yeah.
there's nothing really keeping you from just indulging in these activities.
Yeah.
Um, and that's one thing I think I learned after. I'm glad that you mentioned the whole taking care of other folks. I'm a single mom and have been since I was 17. So I have had, I've never lived on my own until 2017.
Wow.
Yeah. So rediscovering yourself and reinventing yourself at any age is within the possibility for anyone. I don't care what walk of life, poverty, flourishing, like, there, as you mentioned, choices. There are always opportunities and choices that comes with those opportunities, and sometimes we just have to believe in ourselves and say yes. And I don't think women do that enough, that
Yeah.
I can do this without society telling me what I can do, or I can do this without worrying about what my family's going to think, or whether my partner will be supportive, or will it get me a
Mm-hmm.
man, or whatever the question is. Sometimes we just have to put ourselves first, practice that kind of self-care, and make choices that are going to feed us spiritually and emotionally and intellectually and physically. So
Absolutely. And I love that you touched on that, because I think that's the definition of being an active participant in your own life. And that's really why I wanted to do this podcast. So everything about this podcast is centered around mental health, personal wellness, to help prevent stress and overcome burnout, to live with intention. And
yeah,
there's nothing that speaks to that more than the level of our choices. Also, just knowing that it's easy to go with the flow, right? It takes
yeah,
courage to actually say, you know what? No, I'm not going to go with the flow. I don't agree with that. And then go against the grain to some degree to pour into yourself. And that's what I want these conversations to be about. If nothing else, to encourage women and encourage any listener to realize, like, you don't have to accept what people give you. A lot of
at
the time,
all.
people are projecting. You do not need to wait for permission. That's not necessary for you to live your best and fullest life. there are a lot of people out here, and it doesn't take money either, because self-care is more than bubble baths. Self-care is more
Right.
than even going to
Right.
Bali. Once you have figured out what that revelation is for yourself, you can set the tone for that and live the best life that you can with the most intention that you can. But at the end of the day, it's all centered around you. And what does that look like for you showing up in life for yourself and then being able to show up in life for others?
That is super. Oh my gosh, that's a sermon right there. That is a word for real. Women center everyone but themselves. They will center their children, their parents, their siblings, their partners, everyone but themselves. And sometimes we have to sit just alone with us and say, I need to take care of me. I saw a meme somewhere where it showed the instructions when you get on a plane and they give you the instructions on using the oxygen masks.
Yes, yes.
And it was directed toward women to remind women the same way you have to put the oxygen mask on yourself first before you put on somebody else so that you don't pass out when the plane is depleted of air. Yep. We have to take care of ourselves first so we can take care of others. Otherwise, we'll be spent and empty and they'll be full and they won't even know how to take care of us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's funny you say that, because I was just talking to someone today about the caregiver syndrome, where the caregiver is usually caring for the other person and the caregiver winds up dying before the person they're caring for. Why? Exactly. Because they are spent. They have not poured into themselves. They have not been supported. And that's what a lot of women have, is that whole caregiver mentality. However, society continues to perpetuate that. But yet we're in a new era where we have a lot of women saying, no, I can be a mom. I can be this businesswoman. I can do all these things and still be great at that and need to pour into myself. And that's okay too.
Yes. Despite any naysayers, because there will always be those.
Yes. And the devil is a liar and God is a healer and God is the truth. So no matter what anybody tries to throw your way, if it doesn't align, you just eliminate.
Thank you. Exactly. Like God will show you what is meant for you, what's not meant for you. You don't need like somebody on the sideline trying to coach you on what is meant for you and not meant for you, because God will reveal it or he'll remove it.
Oh, that's the truth.
Yeah. I've had so many gigantic major milestones in my life that people gave me the no decision on my behalf. Like, you can't do that because you have kids, or you can't do that because you'll be away from your family, or you can't do that because, no, girl, so many times I was cautioned not to move. I moved from Buffalo to Atlanta. I'm originally from Buffalo. I was cautioned not to move to Atlanta because I was going to be away from my family. I did it anyway. I was cautioned not to take the job with Amazon and move to Seattle because men in Seattle don't date Black women and no dude was going to want me. That came from another guy. It came from another man, of course. I'm like that.
Wait a second. We need to do a whole segment on that, because that's nerve. That's a whole set of nerve.
A whole set of nerve. First of all, moving across country is kind of a life decision. I don't think I was going to make it based on my dating opportunities. Let's start there. But also, like, this wasn't a person I was close to. This is some random guy who was interested in me and was just discouraging me because he wanted me closer. Like the audacity and presumption to think you could influence me to not make this gigantic life decision because you want to go on the first date, like, that's a whole other discussion.
But that's a dude we don't even want to talk to. Like, now we're super not interested.
Super not interested. And that move from Atlanta to Seattle, it gave me a bump in salary that was close to 6 figures. So, right. I've had people tell me not to buy when I should and should not buy a house. I've had people tell me not to relocate here back to the DMV, not to take a particular job. Like, there will always be naysayers or people kind of poo-pooing major life decisions. That's why it's important for you to get very centered in yourself as a human being, but women specifically, because we have that caregiver syndrome. We have to get very centered within ourselves and understand our own alignment and our own vision of what we need and want out of life, so that when it comes to that, we can not only make the decision, but then we can respond to the naysayers who are well-intentioned. It'll be the people who love you. I've had family members who really love me and said, this is a bad idea. And I had to be centered enough to say, This is right for me.
Yes.
I know that you're well-intentioned. I know that you would have my best interest at heart, but this decision right now is right. Even the trip to Bali, a couple people were like, you really want to do that right now? And I was like, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I had to be centered enough that I can make those decisions. And then for those who deserved a explanation, I did explain. But for a lot of people, it's like, I'm not even going to explain this to you because I'm grown and I can do what I want. Period.
Girl, no, it's a full sentence. People laugh all the time when I say that. I don't have to explain anything. I do not. I used to date guys and they'd be like asking me questions about my house and things like that. Do you pay any bills in here, sir? Like, let's be very clear. There are very few people in my life who get explanation for things because no, the full sentence. And once you are centered in yourself, you become very unapologetic about your yeses and your nos.
Yes.
And that takes a level of courage again. And Maya Angelou has a really good quote on courage and how it is the most essential of all of the virtues. Because once you have courage, you can do all of the other virtues. But without courage, you can do none of them.
That is so good and so true. Because what we think is a mundane, everyday, yes or no decision, a lot of times is going to give us a lot of blowback, a lot of pushback. Like there are consequences, and we have to be courageous enough to be okay with that. We also have to be courageous enough to be able to take on risk and be vulnerable, which is something that most people are really not good at. Vulnerability and taking on risks. And I want women to find that safe space within themselves and offer grace to themselves to be open and vulnerable and take on risks so that when other folks come with, some BS, you're like, I'm good.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's about taking a calculated risk, right? Like we're not saying go out there and be foolish. Like that would be different. Calculated risks look very different than those impulse risks, like impulse purchases, impulse decisions. Those things look very different. When you're calculated and you're saving your money, you can make real business moves and boss moves and decisions that look real different than somebody at the cash register trying to determine if they can get the magazine on the side while they're waiting in line because they can't afford it. That's a very different thing. Calculated risk is very different.
That's the, like, when I was thinking about the move from Atlanta to Seattle and taking the job with Amazon, and the guy was like, you shouldn't do that because they don't take Black women. We had already run the financials. We had already considered any cultural differences because Atlanta is a very different cultural place than Seattle. We had considered that. We considered, the disparity in cost of living. Like I had already run through this with my homegirls, like my sister circle. So I had already figured out the calculated risk that came along with, and we had already accounted for the dating thing. Like, girl, with the bump in a salary of 6 figures, I could import a guy if I wanted to. You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
We had already done the risk management in our heads. So when he came with this line, I was like, sweetie, I'm good. I thank you for the tip, but I think I'm okay. And that's the important thing about when you take on a calculated risk and being centered. Also, you figured out what the potential outcomes are and you're aware of them. So you know what you're getting into, which is very important too.
And that's about being intentional. There's nothing more intentional than thinking a scenario all the way out and figuring out how it could play good or bad multiple different ways. And then still being like, you know what? I'm going to go after this. That's intentionality at almost the highest level. Because it's easy for somebody to just pick you up and say, get in the car. Where we going? I don't know. What we going to do? I don't know. It's different to be like, hold on, where we going? Okay, well, I'm not going anywhere till you tell me where we're going. I'm not doing anything till you tell me what we're doing. Like, there's no more ride or die chicks. I want to know where we going, what we doing, how we getting there, who else going to be there. Because I always remember this, what's her name? Tiffany Haddish. She did an interview right after Girls Trip. And she said the best piece of advice that anyone gave her was Queen Latifah. And she told her, don't hang out with people that ain't got nothing to lose. And that's a completely different dynamic than what we were brought up doing and being and hanging out with.
Completely different. That's some good advice too.
Girl, I was like, that's the best piece of advice ever. Because
yes.
you're not going to be in situations with people. If they ain't got nothing to lose, then you could easily be in a situation where you lose everything.
Right.
But if y'all both got stuff to lose, you're intentional about who you hang out with. You're intentional about your words. You're intentional about the engagement, the conversation, anything your name is associated with. If you got something to lose.
And you make much better choices, and your choice will be in better alignment because you all both know that you have things to lose. So yes.
Absolutely.
And for some reason, when all that came to mind, I started thinking about so many people, and women too, but so many people get into business without calculating the associated risks. And then they're stressed out because they're stressed because their books are off, or their taxes are off, or they didn't cover, like something popped up that they didn't anticipate. I'm like, think through those scenarios before you go down that road to a certain extent, and have people in your circle who ask you really hard questions. Like, I have a girlfriend and she'll be like, so what if this happens? You're like, that won't happen. She's like, well, but what if it does? And it makes you think through things that you would not normally have thought through. And you can plan to a certain extent for them, or figure out an exit strategy. So
absolutely. I have two girlfriends that call those type of friends. Those people are your board of directors.
Yes.
And they're on your team. They help you poke holes through things so that you can think of all these things. And I think every set of women every woman needs a board of directors. Yes. Everyone needs a board of directors, but especially women. Yes. Because we need somebody, you need that friend that's not going to put no sugar on anything. That she's going to tell you straight like it is, no chaser. Then you need that friend that's going to say it a little bit nicer. Then you need that friend that's just a wild one. Like, you need a crew that's like Girls Trip for real. You need you need people like that in your life, because they just add to the flavor and spice of life, but they also help us stay accountable to ourselves, our goals, the life that we say we want for ourselves. And if we can't, I always tell people, we can't be friends if I can't tell you the truth. So I think it works both ways.
Thank you. Exactly. And when you get a little off track and get a little misaligned, like you get out of balance,
they bring you back.
They bring you back. They will help you. They will help you correct without like trying to put you on Front Street or embarrass you. Like the goal isn't to put you on blast. The goal is to help you get realigned, or to help you get recentered. And I love that about, like, your board of directors. I'm going to use that too. I love that.
Awesome. Please do. Yes. All right. So my last question, you talk so much about being in IT. What does self-care and wellness look like in IT? And how does it show up, either for you or for other people that you know? Because IT is a hard industry to work in, but then also, how do you maintain your wellness and self-care in it?
It is. We talk a lot about across the industry in all of the cities that I named. Like, it's an ongoing topic about maintaining work-life balance. It's a challenge in corporate America also, but we get it. The pressure is a little bit higher, I guess, because when we make mistakes, and I'm speaking on my own behalf, this is my own opinion, I'm not speaking on behalf of Amazon, but when we make mistakes, they end up in the New York Times and on Twitter. And I'm not even being facetious. Like, that's a real concern. And I don't want to end up on Twitter. Like, I don't want to end up having to talk to my boss about why something we did ended up in the New York Times.
Yeah.
So all of the techniques that we learned in Bali, or the techniques I learned beforehand, just on a regular basis, and maintaining work-life. So simple stuff like cutting my computer off at 5 p.m. Eastern time every day. Like, you're done. Don't try to work until 6 or 7 until you get that thing done. Like, you have to cut your workday off at a certain time. You have to start your workday at a certain time. Even when we're working from home, people get super relaxed because we're all working from home. So they're like, well, I can log on earlier and work a little later. No.
No.
Set your schedule, maintain some level of routine. Like, if you have to walk your dogs or water your plants or go out and get some air or have a real lunch, like, maintain those routines and those schedules to try to keep things together. There are and this has been the case for every company I worked for. It was the same when I worked for UPS, because UPS drivers have issues maintaining work-life balance. And when I worked for Home Depot, I worked on the .com side, the customer facing side. So if there was a problem or something went awry, the website might be impacted. So it was the same issue. So when I say some of these things, it's across all of the companies that I've worked for. There's a level of stress that comes with the territory, particularly in e-commerce companies, because everything we do is so visible. So when I say like having a physical routine to work out and trying to de-stress is part of the way I maintain like my physical and or emotional wellness. Like going for a walk helps me alleviate stress. Getting out and getting fresh air helps me alleviate stress. Interacting with other people, because we're human and we need human interaction, helps. Even if it's just going for a walk and smiling at somebody from 6 feet away, like that helps me relieve stress. And I'm going to keep saying yoga and meditation, because I honestly feel like when the trip to Bali and the things that I learned helped me get through some really challenging emotional things I was dealing with on a personal level. But I've taken some of those techniques, like trying to remove myself from situations and taking a moment to meditate, or taking a moment to hit a yoga pose, or going out for a walk, or I do mudras sometimes, because that's like the least you can do. And even in a meeting, if I'm not on camera, I can do those. And I hope I'm pronouncing that right. The hand yoga exercises and stretching.
Oh, I don't know the name of that, but okay.
I think it's mudras. I believe it's MUDRAS. And the idea is that there are pressure points in your hands that channel energy that affects other parts of your body. As a tech person, you sit for a long period of time, so you get a lot of lower back compression, that leads to lower back issues. But there are ways that I can hit pressure points in my hands to try to alleviate some of my stress. And sometimes I don't necessarily hit my back, but stretching my back while I'm doing them. People will be on a Zoom call and having a contentious discussion, and I can be off camera doing my mudras and relieving that stress, and they will never know. It's those kind of things that the way that I manage or respond to these things that we deal with, those are my tools or techniques. But and I have my crystals, and I have my singing bowl that I got in Bali. Like I use the incense, essential oil, burning essential oils. Today, I got really stressed out about a meeting because I had some pressure related to it. I know this is going to sound crazy. I got nauseous.
No, it doesn't. Doesn't sound crazy at all. That's what anxiety can do. Yeah.
Yeah. And I keep like ginger tea and ginger chews to offset the nausea. And it helps with indigestion too. And then I had some fruit, because I needed the alkaline, something alkaline to offset the gas I had in my stomach, the indigestion. And I immediately felt better. It's those kind of things that I personally rely on to manage my stress level on a regular basis. That way I don't think I've been in crisis mode. And I've had some personal challenges since Bali in the last couple of years. But when I was in Bali, I came because I was in crisis mode. Like I had something I was dealing with that was really bothering me. I don't think I've been in crisis mode since Bali, not just because of like it was an awesome vacation, but because of all of the things that we learned during that trip. So I use all of those techniques on a regular basis, and also following you, following Christine. No, seriously, like even if I don't always say anything, I'm liking stuff because I'm taking mental notes. I follow a bunch of women wellness folks who are practicing what they preach, like they're active in their practices, and try to learn from them as much as possible so I can keep growing in my own personal practices and doing things that benefit me. I am drug free, and I'm not saying that to brag. This is just to say at 55, there's no blood pressure medication. There's no sugar, like nothing for diabetes. Like I'm not taking anything prescription. I take supplements on occasion, but generally I just try to eat right and be physically active to a certain extent. So that way, like I can be proactive about my physical wellness, and that helps with my stress relief and emotional wellness. I hope that makes sense.
Absolutely. That definitely makes sense. But I love how you touched on it and how you recognized it within all of the organizations you worked for, because again, we don't see enough Black women in tech. We don't see enough Black women sharing their stories that work for these organizations and even speaking about any level of stress. So On LinkedIn, I think we see it way more, but LinkedIn is a professional networking site. So
Right.
that's what it's there for. We see it way more, but even there, we don't see it enough about how
You're right.
Black women are dealing with stress. We're always talking about like diversity and inclusion and diversity. And a lot of that conversation, as much as it's as inclusive, it doesn't always include us. And because it doesn't, we don't get to share this type of conversation. And I think that's what's missing with us sharing our stories. We need to share how we're maintaining our health and wellness. Everyone's not overwhelmed and stressed all the time. And
Right.
there are reasons for that, no matter what our jobs are. Once we have created and set those personal boundaries for ourselves, we're able to do that mental scan of our body and say, okay, wait a second, this is off. Let me check in with myself real quick. How are you feeling? What's
Right.
going on? When's the last time you ate? Did you have any water today? Okay, water. Let's get water. Like, I
Right.
always believe there's a wellness pyramid. And I always tell people this, the 3 parts are your physical, spiritual, and your creative. And even
Yeah.
tapping into that creative outlet is huge. You don't realize what it taps into you, the little girl inside of you and things of that nature that maybe like doing hair, maybe like coloring, maybe like drawing. And as an adult, you don't spend enough time doing that. But then when you revisit it, it's like, oh, I really did enjoy this. And it brings
Yeah.
about a youthfulness even in your spirit that you
I'm
feel a little bit lighter for.
I'm glad you said that, because I do have a coloring book. I have a Black women's hair coloring book that has a bunch of naturals in it, sisters with braids and afros and stuff, so they look like us. That I keep at my desk, and sometimes I'll take breaks and color in that. My plants. I every once in a while I'll make a TikTok, but I'll make that a habit just because TikTok takes a lot of energy, and I don't have that kind of energy. I've got some plant pots, some clay pots that I'm working on painting, just because I like designs. And those are, I didn't, until you mentioned, I forgot that, yeah, I got all these other things that I do to try to encourage my creative side, and that also helps you maintain a level of balance. But I'm glad that you said that about us not seeing that often enough, because sisters let me say it more professionally. Black women have the super women. Girl, I code switch all the time.
You
Black
don't
women
gotta code switch here, girl. Say them sisters. We them sisters. She is me and I am she, and you are her too.
Yes. Sisters be having the super woman syndrome, and that's cute and all, but it will kill you. And I don't
Yeah.
mean that facetiously. Like,
No, literally, it will kill you.
we will try to put up this facade of having all of these superpowers and being able to do all these things, and we never are open and revealing about the part of us that's vulnerable, that sometimes is weak, that sometimes needs care. So yeah, like, and I probably need to be more active about the journey on Instagram too. But like, I want sisters to understand that, yes, what we do is dope. Like, yes, it's dope that we are in tech and doing our thing. But also we need to tell, particularly the juniors, and I call them juniors, and it's not out of disrespect, it's just they're new to the industry. Tell the juniors, like, yo, these managers that you report to, they're gonna ask you for the world. And you can say no. You have options. It's not you're not, they're not doing you a favor by giving you a job.
No.
It's
Like,
a
can you
job.
say that again for the people in the back, please? Because when you're young, you believe that, especially coming out of college. Like, I think that seriously, someone needs to tell them that, like, you can say no.
You can say no. It's okay. You have options. You also have the option to move around a lot. Like, the days of working for a company for 20 years are over. So the idea that you have to toe the line and toe the company line, that is, and do what people tell you just because you're trying to keep your foot in the door. No, if this opportunity, and we say this in interviews across all of the companies I work for, this may not be a good fit for you. Like, you could be qualified or overqualified for the position, but the position might not be a good fit for you. When we do interviews, it's to see both sides, whether the job's a good fit for them and they're a good fit for a job, both ways, because we don't want to bring somebody in and them not be successful.
Absolutely.
Folks need to make conscious decisions like, yo, this job may not be the right job for me, so let me see if there's some other things I want to do from a creative or career pathing perspective.
Let me piggyback on that.
Sure.
It may not be for you, and that is okay.
Yes.
And do not chase the dollar. Culture is what is most important at any organization, not the dollar. No one tells you that. They tell you, go to school, get this degree, be successful. Success is not only money. Joy is success. Living and walking in your joy and your peace daily is success. You may
Yes.
not be making six figures and you can still be successful. No one
Right.
tells you that going into these organizations. They tell you to go up the ladder. The
Yep.
ladder may not be a straight path up. It could be left, right, back. You may actually take a interim position, which may seem like a demotion, to actually get
Yes.
you promoted even further. But no one tells
Yes.
you that.
Yeah, that right there. I had a conversation with a peer today. He is taking a moment and he's leaving on good terms, but he's taking a
Mm-hmm.
moment, taking a couple months off to figure out what he wants to do in his next role, which means he's leaving the company.
Mm-hmm.
And we had an offline conversation and he was like, they asked him a question about his next opportunity. He was like, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. And they were like, you really don't know? So I had an offline conversation like, I'm glad that you said that so that they understand this. He's 6 years out of college. Don't get it twisted. So he's somewhat of a junior, but he's been in this game long enough to know that sometimes you have to pause to figure out what you want the next opportunity to do, and that he has
Mm-hmm.
options,
Mm-hmm.
and that chasing the bag might not be the thing that he wants to do. He and I had a really candid conversation. He was like, you don't want to become like a VP or be in the C-suite? I'm like, no, because I like sleeping and traveling.
Hello. No one
Mm-mm.
tells you when you get to a certain point, you don't rest. You are the point of contact for everything. They
Right,
constantly come to you.
right.
Rest is important.
Very. Very. And I enjoy rest. I also enjoy my off time. I enjoy my time with my family. I enjoy this
Mm-hmm.
travel. And I'm not saying that all of the leaders work like maniacs. I just know that I know the level I want to hit and what I need to do to get there. And I know that I don't necessarily need to get beyond that, because that will be where I achieve work-life balance and where I achieve the level of satisfaction in my career path. And at some point, I want to do my own entrepreneur thing anyway. So, I know what that looks like. And that's also the way I feel like I sort of aspire or strive for wellness in understanding it's this career. It's cute, but it's an accessory to my life. It's not what my entire life is about. My life doesn't revolve around work. And I think a lot of folks in tech think work is the life. I'm like, no, you can have a life. Work is just a part of that.
I could not have ended this better, girl. That was a whole mic drop. This is cute, but it's an accessory to my life. Let's be very
Yes.
clear, because I think that, again, society, even our upbringing, it teaches us to betray ourselves. It teaches us to not go after the things we're truly passionate about. And it teaches us to strive, strive, strive. But then what happens when you get to where you've been striving to get to this whole time? It's an
Right.
accessory. You can't
Right.
do none of this stuff without family. You can't do none of this stuff without love. You can have a great career, but if you don't have anyone to share your life with, and that means across
Exactly.
the board in friendship, this is not just in non-platonic relationships, even friends. Like, you want to be
Yes.
able to cultivate and have these moments, but we sometimes work so hard climbing the ladder that all this time passes and you don't realize you missed important events. You missed important occasions with your friends and your family. And then people think like, okay, I can't count on that person, so I'm not going to invite them anymore. And it
Right.
creates dissension unnecessarily. And it is
Right.
an accessory. You're not
Yes.
born to walk this earth to just work and pay bills and
Right.
keep achieving things just for someone else. Like, no,
Right.
no, no, no.
Right. Right. And I don't care where you work. Like, I don't care if you work for like uh John and Edith's Five and Dime, or you work for a
Mm-hmm.
large scale company like Amazon and Walmart. And again, these opinions are my own, but it doesn't matter where you work. I believe that this country is a little out of balance when it comes to that whole idea about working and what work means to
Mm-hmm.
you. For
Mm-hmm.
me, my life doesn't revolve around it. I enjoy what I do. It's fun. I'm still doing it because it's fun, and I enjoy it because I have managed to figure out what work-life balance looks like for me. At the point at which that stops being the case, I will go do something else. I will make a conscious decision to pivot and go find something else to do.
Yes. And we're going to end on that note. I thank you so much, Lynn, because we have to end on that note, because that is just a whole mic drop moment. And that's important for people to hear. So
Yeah.
hopefully all of y'all listening, you had your notepad out. If you didn't, I encourage you to rewind, start from the beginning, take all these notes down, because there are many gems and many takeaways from this beautiful conversation about wellness, about age, about careers, and calculated risk. I hope you got the takeaways from this. Lynn, thank you so very much.
Thank you
Thank you.
so
Thank
much
you.
for having me. This was beautiful. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Wow, what a dope conversation with Lynn today. Oh my gosh. So many gems. I hope you wrote them all down. That last one about this career is cute, but it ain't everything. That right there, whoa. Perspective is everything. There needs to be balance in every area of our life, especially our careers. So I loved everything that Lynn talked about today and how we were able to have just a real conversation about what balance looks like in our careers. And as Black women sharing this level of conversation around our wellness, because we do not have it enough. So follow Lynn on social media. All her info will be in the notes. And make sure that you come back next week to the WellFit Lab podcast and join me for our conversation next Monday, where we'll be digging into everything around preventing stress, overcoming burnout to help you live life with intention. Until next time.